Step into the unknown with Serenity Valley Stories. Remember to like and subscribe, if you wish to hear more. And now our feature presentation, The Deep Below. We should have turned back the moment we saw the entrance. That's the thought that keeps circling in my head. The warning was right in front of us, clear as day. The air felt wrong, too still, too heavy, like the earth was holding its breath. The rusted metal gate, bent and overgrown with vines, looked more like a tombstone than an entrance. It marked the boundary between the world above and the dark, forgotten space below. But we didn't listen to our instincts. 6 of us stood there that morning, full of confidence, staring into the gaping mouth of the old Blackwood Mine. The mine had been sealed off for decades after a deadly cave-in that had killed several miners in the 1950s. Strange things were said to have happened since then, disappearances, ghostly sightings, but Derek wouldn't let that stop him. "This is gonna be epic," he'd said with that wild grin of his, holding his flashlight like a sword, ready to cut through the darkness. I didn't share his enthusiasm, but I wasn't about to admit it either. Curiosity had brought us here, and pride kept us from leaving. As the oldest in our group, Derek naturally led the charge, but it was really his obsession with the old legends that had gotten us here. He'd been poring over books on local history, finding half-forgotten stories about the mine and the strange occurrences that followed the tragic cave-in. A miner was said to have died down there, his body never recovered, and rumor had it his spirit still lingered, angry and vengeful, keeping anyone who entered the mine from escaping. None of us believed in ghosts. Not really. At least, not when we were standing in the sunlight. The others followed Derek inside, and I stayed back for a moment, looking over the scene one last time before heading in myself. The rest of the group was already disappearing into the shadows of the mine. Jenny, the quiet one, always looking like she had something on her mind but never saying much, Mike, the skeptic who treated everything like a bad joke, Clara, level-headed, but she liked a good thrill, and Lucas, Derek's best friend and partner in crime. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The instant the daylight faded, it felt like the mine swallowed me whole. The cool, musty air was a sharp contrast to the warmth of the morning outside. My flashlight flickered to life, and the walls around me came into focus. Jagged stone and old wooden beams groaned under the weight of the earth, as if the mine was holding back a flood that wanted to break free. "Creepy, isn't it?" Jenny whispered, walking beside me. "Yeah," I replied, my voice sounding too loud in the narrow passage. "But it's just an old mine, right?" She didn't say anything, but her wide eyes scanned the tunnel like she didn't quite believe me. The deeper we went, the more the mine began to feel alive. The walls seemed to close in around us, pressing in from all sides. The air felt thick, damp, and heavy, like it was pushing against us. And then there were the sounds, the kind you can only hear when everything else is silent. Little creaks, groans, and soft echoes that you could almost convince yourself were normal. Almost. I caught Mike looking over his shoulder more than once, his usual smirk nowhere to be found. Even Derek had slowed down, the bravado fading from his steps. Something had shifted in the air. No one said it aloud, but we all felt it. "I thought we'd find something by now," Derek said, more to himself than anyone else. He swept his flashlight along the walls, revealing only stone and dirt. "Maybe some old tools, or I don't know, something. I'm more concerned about getting out of here without the whole thing collapsing," Mike muttered, his voice low. That's when the first tremor hit. It was so subtle at first, like a soft rumble, the kind you feel more than hear. But then it grew, the ground beneath us trembling, dust falling from the beams overhead. We froze, looking around wildly as the walls seemed to shudder. "Is that an earthquake?" Lucas asked, his voice betraying the fear that none of us wanted to admit. Before anyone could respond, the tunnel behind us collapsed. The roar of rock and earth filled the air as the tunnel caved in, cutting off our way back. The dust rose up in thick clouds, choking the light from our flashlights and blinding us. I stumbled backward, coughing, my heart racing. When the dust finally settled, a wall of rubble stood where the entrance had been. Our way out was gone. Panic set in immediately. Jenny was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "What do we do? We're trapped." Derek, always the leader, tried to take control of the situation. "There's gotta be another exit. Mines like this always have more than one way out. We'll just have to keep going." Mike glared at him, his face pale. "You're sure about that, Derek? Because it doesn't seem like you know what the hell you're talking about anymore. Do you have a better idea?" Derek shot back. "We had no choice. We couldn't go back, and staying put was just as dangerous. The only option was to go deeper, and hope Derek was right." We moved on in silence, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on us. The mine seemed darker now, as if the collapse had woken something up, something that didn't want us there. Every step felt heavier, and the cold in the air was more than just the underground chill, it felt wrong, unnatural. I started seeing things, or at least I thought I did. Shadows flitting at the edge of my vision, small movements just outside the reach of my flashlight. But every time I turned to look, there was nothing. "Anyone else feel like they're being watched?" Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. We all felt it, but no one wanted to admit it. Derek led the way, his confidence fading with each step. Mike, normally the loudest, hadn't said a word since the collapse. Lucas stuck close to Derek, but even he seemed rattled. And then we heard it. A voice, faint at first, like a whisper carried on the wind. But there was no wind down here, just the stale, suffocating air of the mine. The voice grew louder, still unintelligible, but full of anger. It echoed off the walls, surrounding us. I shone my flashlight in every direction, my heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called out, though I already knew the answer. Nobody responded. Suddenly, Lucas screamed. It was a sound of pure terror, the kind that freezes your blood. We all spun around, but Lucas was gone. His flashlight lay on the ground, its beam flickering as it pointed at nothing. Derek ran toward where Lucas had been standing, shouting his name, but there was no trace of him. It was like he'd been swallowed by the mine itself. "This isn't happening," Mike muttered, pacing in tight circles, his breathing shallow. "We need to get out of here. Now." We ran. There was no plan, no discussion. We just ran, deeper into the mine, hoping to find another way out, even though none of us believed we would. The voice followed us, growing louder, more distinct. It wasn't just a voice anymore, it was a presence, something malevolent and suffocating. I could feel it pressing down on us, slowing us down, picking us off. Clara tripped first. She stumbled over an old rail track and fell hard, her flashlight skittering away. Before she could even get back up, something grabbed her. She screamed, her hands clawing at the ground, but she was yanked backward into the darkness. Derek dove after her, but he was too late. Clara's screams echoed through the tunnel, then stopped abruptly. There was nothing left but silence. Derek slumped against the wall, his face pale, his chest heaving. "We can't stay here," I said, my voice barely steady. "We have to keep moving." Mike looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Are you kidding? We're gonna die down here." "No, we're not," Derek said, his voice low but firm. "There's another exit. There has to be." We pressed on, the three of us now, but the mine had become a maze of narrow tunnels, each one more claustrophobic than the last. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick with dust and something else, something cold, like a breath on the back of my neck. I heard Jenny cry out behind me. I turned just in time to see her vanish into the shadows, her flashlight dropping to the ground. We rushed toward the spot where she'd been standing, but there was nothing there. Just empty space and the cold, suffocating air. We were running out of time. By the time we saw the faint glimmer of light ahead, there were only three of us left, me, Mike, and Derek. The presence followed us still, its whispers turning into angry, guttural sounds. It wanted us, and I knew we wouldn't all make it out. When we burst into the open air, the relief was almost unbearable. We collapsed in the dirt, gasping for breath, our bodies shaking with exhaustion and fear. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the mountains. We were alive. But not all of us. Lucas, Clara, and Jenny were gone, lost to the mine, claimed by whatever haunted that place. The silence between us was heavy, our minds reeling from the terror we had just endured. We had escaped, but there was no triumph, no joy in survival. Only guilt. It's been months since we escaped, but I still hear the voice sometimes, faint but unmistakable. And I know, deep down, that the ghost is still down there, waiting. Waiting for the next group of fools to stumble into its domain. Thank you for watching Serenity Valley Stories. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another scary tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below.